Healing from trauma caused by narcissistic abuse.
Is healing possible after such bourgeois betrayal? Can we reclaim our lives and rediscover our true selves again? The answer is yes, even after sustained abuse spanning years or decades. The path is challenging, but for those willing to walk it, a vibrant new beginning awaits on the other side. This is a journey of rebirth, of excavating buried light from the dungeons of our psyche and letting it flood every cell of our body once more. The process requires brutal honesty, courage, and the humility to ask for support when we need it. There are no shortcuts, no quick fixes, but the destination of lasting joy, freedom, and inner peace makes each uncomfortable step worthwhile.
Rebuilding your support system.
An inescapable component of the narcissist's agenda is isolating their victims from any supportive relationships or community ties that could threaten their control. This isolation allows their insidious brainwashing and traumatic bonding to take root. After emancipating from a narcissistic relationship's ensnarement, survivors must undertake the equally important task of rebuilding their support structure. These connections are not just nice to have, they provide an invaluable foundation for self-actualization post-abuse. The work begins by evaluating existing connections and setting boundaries. It's common for survivors to have been lied to about the seriousness of their situation or had confidences broken by people in their former circle. Behaviors like dismissing the abuse, blaming the victim, or minimizing their experiences cannot be tolerated going forward. While setting boundaries feels difficult at first, preserving these connections intact actually erodes recovery progress. At the same time, the ability to discern trustworthy and toxic personalities must be refined and exercised. To avoid recreating new abusive dynamics, careful vetting of any potential additions to one's circle is required. Trusting intuition and watching for mirroring of any narcissistic red flags becomes paramount. Once the networks have been culled and reseeded responsibly, additional practices support nurturing healthy bonds. These include self-disclosure, interdependence, sharing celebrations, and providing/receiving caring accountability. Support groups and therapist-aided sessions can assist establishing these skills at a pace survivors are comfortable with. With perseverance and introspection, survivors develop non-judgmental bonds with those who reflect their ideals and desired ways of relating going forward. Slowly, the security and joy of a fulfilling support structure blossoms, repairing what narcissistic isolation tried so hard to sever.
Radical self-compassion.
At the core of every narcissist's regime is the systematic erosion of their target's self-worth. Pathological projection, criticism, gaslighting, and other deceptive manipulations nurture a dysfunctional relationship to oneself founded on toxic shame, self-loathing, and harsh internalized negativity. In essence, the narcissist hands their victim an inner abuser to perpetuate the suffering long after separation occurs. That is why radical self-compassion comprises a central pillar of any effective recovery program for narcissistic abuse survivors. Without it, the void of inner degradation remains to be refilled by a newly emerging, healthier self-concept and voice that uplifts rather than denigrates. Radical self-compassion is neither a Pollyannish self-indulgence nor navel-gazing narcissism. It is a soul-guided process of coming back into intimate, honoring relationship with one's vulnerability, trauma responses, perceived flaws, and inherent wholeness that abuse severed. In recovery work, spaces are created where one can lay down the performative masks narcissists forced on them. Self-acceptance on its terms, not the narcissist's, represents an active reclamation of selfhood. It means no longer beholden to external metrics for enoughness. As self-compassion supplants self-rejection, survivors find deeper reservoirs of agency, calm, and wisdom to draw upon during waves of narcissist-induced trauma resurfacing. The roots of their identity planted in stable, compassionate soil provide sanctuary for the soul to return home.
Creative expression for healing.
Abuse by narcissists freezes us in a state of defensiveness. Our vast inner artistry and playful spontaneity atrophies under the oppression of their controlling environments. Our spirits become disconnected from our own intuitive flow, leaving a stagnant void where life force once pulsed. Engaging in creative expression is therefore an essential pathway for catalyzing narcissistic abuse recovery on a visceral level. It invites the spontaneous part of us we armored over to come back out and play. In doing so, pockets of liberating joy emerge, and trauma that lacked resolution finds new pathways for integration. Some modalities that support this process include intuitive movement and dance, music creation and improvisation, visioning and active imagination, painting, writing, pottery, and any other form of expressive arts that allows the soul to move through the body uncensored. Even refamiliarizing with once beloved hobbies can help reactivate our innate creativities. What these practices share is their non-rational, non-analytical approach to processing experience. Rather than intellectualizing the abuse narrative further, they draw from our deeper wells of symbolic thought and metaphoric wisdom. Shadows find embodied expression. Denied emotions receive containers for release. Newfound insights about identity and life purpose crystallize. The narcissist worked so hard to dim our creative lights to dead bulbs, yet those lights could never be permanently extinguished, only temporarily obscured. As we bravely reopen creative channels, our spirits reignite, and from those flames, we become empowered to breathe deeper and to imagine truer realities into existence.
Toxic shame to empowerment.
Toxic shame is a favorite weapon of narcissistic abusers. They deliberately target and wound parts of our soul that already carry shame imprints from childhood. Like heat-seeking missiles, they detect where we are most vulnerable and launch repeated attacks on those places. Their hurtful words resonate like distorted echoes of old family tapes playing inside us. Each wound reinforces the belief that we are flawed, unworthy, and unlovable. Narcissists are masters at spotting our Achilles' heels and exploiting them. Their projections tap into our deepest fears. Over time, the poison infects our psyche until shame becomes our default state of being. In recovery, we must thoroughly detox from this shame until we rediscover our true selves. This requires boldly naming and validating past experiences that first made us susceptible to the narcissist. No more minimizing, justifying, or rationalizing. Owning our stories fully with radical self-compassion takes courage. We must unpack harmful assumptions we carry about ourselves that perpetuate shame. Things like, I am too sensitive, so I deserve the abuse. I have poor judgment, so I attracted this. I am unworthy of real love. I'm a failure for picking the wrong partner. As we chip away each distorted belief, pockets of light enter where darkness once festered. In place of self-blame, we cultivate fierce self-advocacy. We nurture self-trust and empowerment. The more we compassionately lean into areas that used to trigger shame, the weaker their charge becomes. We reclaim our worthiness by honoring our wholeness every experience that brought us to this point. We own our resilience, passions, and dreams. This is our emergence from the cocoon of trauma, when wings that could not fully spread before find space to soar.
Healthy boundaries.
A pivotal milestone in healing is learning to set and enforce healthy boundaries. This serves two key purposes. 1. Protects against narcissists and toxic types being able to access and exploit vulnerabilities in future. 2. Restores a sense of safety and integrity from within. Strong boundaries act as compassionate guardrails giving shape to our lives. They help distinguish who we are from who we are not. They enable us to embody our values and hold space for our needs. With narcissists, our boundaries were methodically crushed to give them full access and control. Restoring them after the fact takes mindfulness, practice, and often outside support. Common scenarios where new boundaries must be erected: ending contact with the narcissist, blocking their access across all channels. Defining which topics are off limits with family and friends. Setting limits on how others speak to and treat us. Carving out alone time to process feelings rather than constantly rushing back into productivity. Pulling back from social media triggers that exacerbate negative emotions. At first, creating boundaries feels uncomfortable. We fear missing out, being rejected, appearing selfish. But the discernment they provide far outweighs any awkwardness. Boundaries are a continual work in progress. Over time, we learn to set them proactively rather than reactively waiting for an issue to arise. We tune into our needs before running on empty. Healthy boundaries become second nature when we know at a core level what nourishes and depletes us. They help construct an unapologetic life on our own loving terms.
Rediscovering joy and self-care.
When abused for so long, we can lose touch with the things that once brought us joy. Buried under obligations and just trying to survive, we neglect the basics of self-care. Costs of this self-neglect accumulate until we feel empty and exhausted. As part of reclaiming our lives post-abuse, restoring simple pleasures and self-care practices is essential. We must gently prod ourselves to step out from the shadows and participate in life again. This requires reacquainting ourselves with the activities and environments that used to make our heart sing, then building them back into routine. Things like revisiting favorite pastimes and hobbies, traveling to our most loved destinations, rereading books/watching movies that made us laugh and uplifted our spirit, spending time in nature and movement, reconnecting with communities and causes that inspire us. It is common to feel guilty investing energy on self-care. The narcissist conditioned us to feel selfish for focusing inward. This too requires unpacking. We must challenge old beliefs that it is somehow wrong to nourish our mind, body, and soul. Self-care is not merely a nice extra, it is essential. Rejuvenating ourselves honors our humanity and empowers us to show up fully for others. Making it a non-negotiable priority is nothing less than an act of fierce and compassionate self-love. As we walk the path of post-abuse recovery, joy and aliveness gradually return. We do not have to wait until we fully heal to start living again. In fact, self-care and joy are absolutely essential ingredients for the healing process. The light we nurture within guides us out of the darkness. The narcissist seeks to extinguish our inner light fully with their dark machinations. But what they do not realize is that light can never be destroyed, only temporarily concealed. With gentle understanding, patience, and support, we uncover the light still glowing inside us, faint but persisting. Slowly, we revive the flickering flame through mindful introspection, compassion, and care. Over time, the light grows warmer, brighter, infusing every cell. A magnificent alchemy occurs. The painful crossed paths with darkness forge new depths of wisdom, resilience, and empathy within us. We emerge wiser yet gentler, with renewed faith in love's power to transform. This light guides us to those who reflect our truth, so we may love freely and be loved fully, without fear or disappointment. The journey to recover from narcissistic abuse is harrowing, but not hopeless. For even when doubt is strongest, light still remains if we know where to look for it, in the very seat of our soul. That ever-enduring light promises not just survival, but profound renewal that narcissists can never extinguish.